On the cold evening of December 19th, 1979, the small city of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, was dressed in snow and quiet anticipation for Christmas. Storefronts glowed faintly at the brand new Westdale Mall, the pride of a growing Midwest town. Among the shoppers that night was 18-year-old Michelle Martinko, a senior at Kennedy High School. She had just come from her school's choir banquet, dressed up, cheerful, and driving her family's 1972 Buick. Her plan was simple: stop by the mall, look for a new winter coat, and then head home. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, but that night would end in one of Iowa's most haunting cold cases. At home, when the clock passed midnight and Michelle still hadn't returned, her parents began to worry. By 2 a.m., they called police. Friends said they'd last seen her at the banquet. She was smiling, laughing, nothing unusual. Just before 4 a.m., officers patrolling the Westdale Mall parking lot spotted a car, Michelle's Buick, parked alone near the J.C. Penney entrance. The engine was off. Frost clung to the windshield, but inside, they saw something horrific. Michelle was slumped over the passenger seat, covered in blood. She had been stabbed over 20 times, chest, face, hands, the signs of a violent struggle. There were no signs of robbery. Her purse, rings, and coat were untouched. The crime scene was chaos frozen in time. No witnesses, no security cameras, no clear motive. Detectives knew immediately this wasn't random. It was personal. That realization would define the next 4 decades of investigation. Part 2. The investigation that went nowhere. In 1979, forensic science was primitive. There was no DNA testing, no digital databases, and fingerprints were still compared by hand. But detectives did what they could. They dusted the car, collected fibers, and photographed every inch of the scene. Inside the Buick, they found something curious: smears of blood that didn't belong to Michelle. The killer had likely cut himself during the attack. Detective Doug Larison was among the first on the scene. He would later say, "It was brutal up close, and whoever did this knew her." Police questioned dozens of people: classmates, ex-boyfriends, mall employees. One name kept returning: Andy Seidel, Michelle's ex-boyfriend. He was cooperative, emotional, and his alibi checked out. His blood type didn't match the unknown sample. Over the next months, investigators interviewed anyone who had seen Michelle that night. There were sightings, maybe of her walking alone in the mall, maybe talking to a man near her car, but maybe wasn't enough to make an arrest. Years passed. Leads dried up. The Martinko family waited by the phone every Christmas hoping for news, but none came. By the mid-1980s, the file labeled Martinko Homicide was moved to the cold case shelf. New detectives came and went, always haunted by the photograph of the girl in the car. Yet the evidence, blood from the killer, was still preserved, carefully sealed in an envelope marked unknown mail. It would sit there for nearly 40 years, until science could finally speak for her. Part 3. The Decades of Silence. As the years turned into decades, Michelle's case became local legend: the unsolved Christmas murder. The Westdale Mall changed owners. The Buick was long impounded, but Michelle's photo stayed on the police department's wall. In 2006, the case saw a flicker of hope. Advancements in DNA testing allowed the lab to extract a full male DNA profile from the old evidence: the blood on her dress and the gear shift. When the results came in, detectives were thrilled. They uploaded the genetic code to CODIS, the National Criminal DNA Database. But nothing. No match. The DNA didn't belong to anyone who had ever been arrested or convicted. Whoever had killed Michelle had stayed out of trouble for 40 years. He could be living next door. He could be anyone. Detectives began building a psychological profile. The killer was likely older now, local, maybe even respected in the community. He would have scars on his hands from the night of the murder. He'd carry the weight of that secret every day. Michelle's parents died before ever learning the truth. Her sister, Janelle, continued to call the police every December. She told reporters, "It's like we're still waiting for her to come home." But by 2010, the case was ice cold again. Technology alone couldn't solve what human persistence had to finish. Then, in 2018, a new kind of detective work arrived. Part 4, A New Kind of Science. In early 2018, investigators across the US were experimenting with a revolutionary approach: genetic genealogy. Instead of comparing DNA to criminal databases, they uploaded profiles to public ancestry sites, places where ordinary people submitted their DNA to learn about their family trees. It was controversial, but for cold case detectives, it was the miracle they'd been waiting for. The Cedar Rapids police decided to try it. They uploaded the unknown male DNA from the Martinko case into the public genealogy database. Weeks later, a geneticist called back with the results. The unknown DNA didn't match anyone directly, but it matched distant relatives, people who shared great-grandparents with the suspect. From there, investigators built a sprawling family tree, dozens of branches, hundreds of names. With the help of genealogist C.C. Moore, they narrowed the search to 3 brothers in Iowa. One of them was named Jerry Lynn Burns. Burns lived just 40 minutes away from Cedar Rapids. He owned a business, had a family, no criminal record. To the world, he was a normal, respectable man. Detectives began surveillance. They needed his DNA to confirm the match. But how? One December afternoon, Burns stopped at a local restaurant for lunch. When he finished, he tossed his used drinking straw into the trash. Detectives waiting nearby retrieved it. Days later, the Iowa Crime Lab confirmed it. The DNA from the straw matched the DNA from Michelle Martinko's car. After 39 years, the name behind the blood was finally known. Part 5, The Arrest and the Trial. On December 19, 2018, the exact 39th anniversary of Michelle's death, police walked into Jerry Lynn Burns' office in Manchester, Iowa. Detectives sat across from him and asked a simple question. "Do you know why we're here?" Burns looked puzzled. He said no. Then they told him, "Your DNA was found at the scene of a 1979 murder in Cedar Rapids." Burns blinked. His face remained calm. He said he didn't know anyone named Michelle Martinko. When asked how his DNA could be in her car, he replied, "I don't know what to say." Detectives arrested him on the spot for first-degree murder. News of the arrest hit Cedar Rapids like a storm. For years, people had whispered theories. A jealous boyfriend, a stranger, even a police officer. No one expected it to be a quiet businessman from a nearby town. In February 2020, after months of hearings, the trial began. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence, the genealogy link, and the timeline. Defense attorneys argued that using genealogy databases violated privacy rights and that retrieving DNA from a discarded straw was unconstitutional. But jurors listened closely to the science. They saw the DNA charts. They heard the experts explain that the chance of the DNA belonging to anyone else was 1 in 100 billion. After 3 hours of deliberation, the verdict came: guilty of first-degree murder. On August 7, 2020, Jerry Lynn Burns was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the first time in 40 years, the Martinko family, what remained of them, had an answer. Part 6. Justice after 4 decades. After his conviction, Burns appealed. His lawyers argued that police should have needed a warrant before testing DNA from his discarded straw. They claimed it violated the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches. But in March 2023, the Iowa Supreme Court upheld the conviction. The justices ruled that DNA voluntarily left behind in public, like on a straw, is not protected by privacy laws. The verdict stood. Burns remains in prison, serving a life sentence. He has never confessed. To this day, he maintains he doesn't know why his DNA was there. For detectives who worked the case, the conclusion was bittersweet. They had justice, but not closure. The why behind the murder, the motive, remains a mystery. Michelle's classmates are now in their 60s. Some still leave flowers at her grave every December. Her photo hangs in the Cedar Rapids Police Department hallway, a reminder of patience, technology, and the belief that no case is ever truly cold. Detective Larison, now retired, once said in an interview, "It wasn't science alone that solved it. It was 40 years of people who refused to forget her." The story of Michelle Martinko is more than a crime solved by DNA. It's about how time, technology, and human determination can rewrite history, one cell at a time.